That is the question I get every time is, can I change my chronotype? Can I shift it one way or another? So the answer is sure. But it's just like jet lag. You'd have to do it every single day, right? So jet lag and chronotypes are actually very similar, right? So if let's say you're in California and you're going to New York, they're ahead of a schedule for you. So it's like you're getting up early as an example, right? And that's miserable and it's not fun. And you have to take melatonin or light therapy or do something like that to shift yourself into that New York schedule from Los Angeles. The same holds true with this. Remember, this is genetic. So it's not like you can say, hey, I wish I was the lion today and go do that. Now, to be fair, you can create a schedule for yourself that gets you closer to something like that. I would caution people, because here's what I can tell you is when I get people who are really sleeping within their chronotype, something very unique happens. There's a consolidation of the total amount of their sleep.
Welcome back to another episode on Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. Now to welcome my next guest, Dr. Michael J. Breus. He's a clinical psychologist, a diplomate of the American Board of Sleep Medicine, and a fellow of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. He's been in practice for 23 years, has been featured on the Dr. Oz show more than 40 times, and was named the top sleep specialist in California by Reader's Digest. Dr. Breus is author of The Power of When, The Sleep Doctor's Diet Plan, Beauty Sleep, and his newest book, Energize, co-authored with Stacey Griffith, the founding Senior Master Instructor of Soulcycle. Well, welcome back to the show, Michael J. Breus. I'm so happy that I get to have you on the podcast again. I know when we originally had you on the podcast, it was very much focused on sleep, which is, of course, your expertise. So we're going to go deeper into that, but we're going to talk more about your newest book, which is Energize. And I'm just so excited about this new book because there's so many more pieces of wisdom and hacks you share that you didn't share in your previous episode. And also the combination of movement and sleep and how that really brings forward so much more energy. So welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And I really appreciate you having me back. I know we talked a little while ago when my third book came out, The Power of When. And now we're going to talk about sleep, but also about energy, which is kind of a new area for me. You know, people have been like, wait, aren't you the sleep doctor? Are you now the energy doctor? Like, what's going on, Michael? And it's like, well, here's the thing is we know that sleep is one of the things that fuels our energy. And so it became an interesting, passionate topic for me, and off I went.
Was there a time that you felt you were lacking energy that got you kind of more intrigued to find out, like, I'm a sleep doctor, I obviously know how to hack my sleep, but what else is happening? Was there something that like a cat?
There was a pretty significant event that happened to me. Unfortunately, it was a cardiac event. As one does when they think they can do it all, I was burning the candle at a million different ends. And you know my travel schedule, it's insane. And I'm a runner. And so the way I reduce my stress is I get on a treadmill or I go outside and run or I work out or something like that. And as the stress kept piling up, I just kept increasing the mileage, right? I would just go from 3 to 5 to 7, because that was the only thing that kind of helped bring it down for me. You can't keep doing that to your body on a very regular basis and not be really following your nutrition, not really be understanding how to train, and be on airplanes all over the place. And so one day my wife and I, actually, we were at dinner with 2 physicians, thankfully. I had a cardiac event right there in the middle of the restaurant. And that was not a lot of fun. I can assure you of that. I ended up having 4 separate times where my heart didn't do the things it's supposed to do correctly. And it was really a wake-up call to me about balance. And I think that is really what the book is about balance. And so I had been working with my dear friend, Stacey Griffith, who's also my co-author. We had been talking a lot about fitness. I had been helping her with her sleep. She had been helping me with my fitness. And we both started to come to some interesting conclusions. One was, she said to me, I've got people who do my classes and they're exhausted. And I'm like, is that a good thing? And she's like, no, it's not a good thing. And I said, I've got people who follow my recommendations, get the right amount of sleep, but are still exhausted. And she was like, do they exercise? And I was like, I've asked the question, but what types of exercise should they do? So all of a sudden we had this big discussion and we started thinking through it. And then I was like, we should write a book, right? Because if it's just about sleep or it's just about movement, you're not getting the full picture here, right? And she's a movement expert, I'm a sleep expert. So we decided to combine forces and really start to understand from a genetic standpoint too. So it's not just, hey, Michael and Stacey decided to come up with a cool, fun program to throw out there for everybody to try. We actually did it based on real science and real genetics. Stacey had a different kind of cardiac issue. She had a broken heart, love-wise, because her partner was a night owl and she is an early bird, and they couldn't sync. So we both kind of had cardiac events.
Wow.
She had the broken heart, I had the real thing. And it really woke both of us up to the idea of balance, the importance of sleep, the importance of movement and nutrition.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that background. But the one thing that I think is fascinating, I don't think a lot of people think about sleep being a factor of their overall health or what is possibly going wrong or why they're lacking energy. Because a lot of people, when they think about energy, they think about food. Like, what am I eating?
Right.
Or what am I not eating?
Right.
And
what's my fuel, right?
Yeah. But which is good to think about. That is one factor. Absolutely. But a lot of people don't realize sleep is one of the biggest parts, and they don't know how to get quality sleep, if you want to say. So how does somebody recognize, like, beginning the process? Let's start the process, because I know in our previous episode that we had, you talked a lot about, of course, what you always share is the chronotype. So I want people to, if they listen to that or have listened to your work before, it will be a recap, but it's important to start the episode about the chronotype so we can lead everything else.
Yeah. So in my previous book, The Power of When, we looked at this idea called chronotypes. Now, people out there may not have heard of the word chronotype, but you've actually heard of the concept before. If you've ever been called, or somebody in your family or a friend has been called an early bird or a night owl, right? Somebody who enjoys waking up at some crazy time in the morning or who loves staying up to some crazy time at night. So it turns out that those aspects of our human condition are genetic. There's a very specific area in the PER3 region of the human genome where if there's a flip-flop of two of the atoms, what are called building blocks, you can become an early bird, or if it flips the other way, you can become a night owl. And so it's really hardcore based in our DNA. Now, a lot of people out there, want to choose, right? I want to become an early bird, I want to be able to stay up and be a night owl. I'm sorry to say it's genetic. You can't really choose it. But what I was able to do was I took a look at these two ideas, early bird and night owl, then started to run through the research, and there were people in the middle, because not everybody's an early bird, not everybody's a night owl. We used to call them hummingbirds, believe it or not. I have no idea why. It really seems like a dumb idea to call them hummingbirds, but for whatever reason, they're hummingbirds. My contribution to the literature was I found a fourth chronotype. Somebody with insomnia, a specific type of insomnia that's pretty easy to identify in this whole genetic kind of makeup. And so what I decided to do was change the names of everything, because I'm not a bird, I'm a mammal. And so I wanted to have an animal name. Now, you can appreciate this when you've created this kind of categorization system, right? And you're trying to come up with avatars or names for things that people can identify with. I chose animals, and I wanted to have animals that actually had the same circadian system that they were representing. It's kind of funny. Nobody wants to be a porcupine. Nobody wants to be a platypus, things like that. So I had to also have aspirational animals that people wanted to be. So early birds become lions, right? Who doesn't want to be the king or the queen of the jungle, right? That's the best. Now, lions are my early risers. These are people that get up 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning on their own, by the way, like without an alarm, like they enjoy this stuff. To be clear, you can tell I'm not an early riser. These are usually my COOs of a company. These are my people who have a tendency to be leaders. They like to make a list every day and go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. They're definitely go-getters, firing off emails at 5 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of people say to me, oh, I wish I was a lion because I'd be so much more productive. I get so much done. Here's the truth of the matter. It's not so great to be a lion. I'll tell you why. Dinner and a movie is out for a lion. They've been up since like 4:30 in the morning. Like they are not social creatures at all, because they're so exhausted by 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. They're in bed. So
I'm laughing because my boyfriend's that.
Right, exactly.
I completely, I've seen it.
You've seen it live and in action, right?
Yeah.
The bears turn out to be in between. So we changed them to bears. I mean, who doesn't want to be a cute, lovable teddy bear, right? Bears actually make up 50% of the population, 50 to 55, believe it or not. And it's best to be a bear. I kind of wish I was a bear because the world works on a bear's schedule. That 9 to 5 is perfect for a bear. They go to bed around 10:30, 11 o'clock. They get up around 7. They can make it through their day. Their energy is pretty decent, that kind of thing. That gets really interesting. Now, these people have a tendency to be a little bit extroverted. They have a tendency to be the kind of people say, hey, come on over to my house for dinner type of people, like really the people that get the work done, but also the friendly, nice people. They're not all extroverts by any stretch of the imagination. There's sort of a combination of them, but they're definitely lively folks. The night owls turn into wolves. I am a night owl. I am a wolf. Remember, wolves, their first kill, usually they kill at night. They're nocturnal creatures. My wolves, my night owls have a tendency to be my creatives. So my actors, my musicians, my authors, people like that. And if you know anybody that's in that creative space and you say, when do you get your inspiration? They always say, oh, at 3 o'clock in the morning, or something like that. So it kind of makes a lot of sense that those people would kind of be down there. Now, we have a tendency as wolves to actually be very different than lions. We take very risky decisions. If we make a list during the day, we go from step 1 to step 12 to step 47, and it makes perfect sense to us. We're kind of a different group of people. We're loyal friends. We're fun to hang out with. We don't usually show up at the party until about 11:30, but we don't go home until 2 a.m. So we're usually the last people hanging out with you, helping you clean up. The fourth category is the insomnia category I talked about, and I call them dolphins. Now, there's a reason that I call them dolphins. Number one, dolphins are kind of cool. I would argue they're one of the coolest mammals in the sea, but dolphins have a unique characteristic with their sleep. They sleep unihemispherically. So half of their brain is asleep while the other half is awake and looking for predators because, they're constantly moving around. So I kind of feel like that's an insomniac, right? They're never quiet asleep. And so I had them be able to be identified that way. Now, these people have somewhat of an erratic sleep schedule. They're oftentimes called insomniacs. They're a lot like lions in terms of they like to get up early and they've got that kind of go-get-itness, but they also have enough anxiety where sometimes they're kind of a little OCD. They have a hard time finishing a project because it's never quite complete, that sort of thing. So when you figure out which one of these chronotypes that you are, then the entire world kind of opens up. So for folks out there who want to figure it out, if you go to chronoquiz.com, we'll put that in the show notes. That way people can be able to go and check out what their chronotype is. Once you learn your chronotype, here's where it gets really interesting. So I'm going to ask you a slightly personal question. So your boyfriend, who is the lion, do you both share the same chronotype, or do you feel like you have a different one?
I'm a bear, kind of. I feel I border,
like a late bear?
No, early bear.
An early bear. Okay.
Yeah.
So we found out that there are hybrids. There are early bears and late bears because they make up such a big percentage of the population. So when you've got a lion with a bear, right, they don't have the same chronotype. I was lucky. When I was dating my wife, it turns out we're both night owls. I would say, like, when do you want me to get you? She'd say, pick me up at 8. We'd be at the restaurant by 8:30 to 9:45, 10 o'clock. We'd then go to the movies. We'd get out at midnight. Then we'd go get a drink and we'd be home at 2. And that was fine for us. Like, we were both, that worked perfectly well. There are people out there that they wouldn't even make it through dinner. They would be so tired, right? So when you have this difference between people, it can definitely weigh a little bit on people. That's the beauty of understanding how chronotypes work. So as an example, let's take what's his name? Your boyfriend's name? Noah. So we're going to pick on Noah. So if Noah gets up at 6:30, let's say he gets up at 5:30 in the morning.
He gets up at like 4:30 naturally.
Even better. So he gets up at 4:30, which means his melatonin stopped about 30 minutes before he got up. Okay. And it stops for him every day at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is why he's able to wake up at 4:30. You, on the other hand, what time do you like to wake up?
I like to wake up at 5:30, but if I were to naturally wake up, it would be approximately 6:30.
Right. So let's say you wake up between 6:30 and 7, if we even gave you a little bit of a long weekend to sleep in a little bit, that's when your melatonin stopped a half an hour before that. So to make the math simple, his melatonin stops at 4 a.m., your melatonin stops at, let's say, 6 a.m. when you're getting up at 6:30. Here's the problem. When you get up at 4:30 with him to go do a workout, your melatonin is still going.
Mm.
So what ends up happening is people are on different schedules and they don't realize it. So you can actually match up the hormones to exactly the right time of your day to do whatever it is you want to do. So as an example, it's not just melatonin that follows this pathway. It's all your hormones. So it's testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. It's your neurotransmitters. Everything flows on this circadian cycle that's unique to you based on your chronotype. So you can actually find natural times throughout the day to do stuff, and you'll do it better just by changing when. That's the power of when you do it. And so that's how that whole concept kind of came forward. Now let's move 5 years later, and we've learned a lot about chronotypes. We learned this idea that there are early bears and late bears, right? So when you got a group that makes up 50% of the population, you got to figure there's some other ways to chop them up a little bit to understand more about their characteristics. So we do have people who have about the amount of time, but some like to go to bed a little bit earlier and wake up earlier. Some like to go to bed a little bit later and wake up later. Not as bad as a lion and not as bad as a wolf, but they do kind of have a tendency to shift around a little bit in there. That was one thing that we learned. The second thing that we learned was when I kind of was working with Stacey, I said to her, how do you know what exercise to give somebody? Because she doesn't just do the spinning, she does, or the cycling, she does, weightlifting, she does all kinds. I mean, she's a fitness expert, right? So I was like, how do you know how to train your people? And she said, well, I look at their body and that tells me where I should start. I was like, okay, what do you mean? And she said, well, when people are really lean, then I have them do cardio first, because I know, number one, they can accomplish it. Number two, it's something that they probably already know how to do. So there's not a big learning curve there. And we get that motivation going. She said, but if I have somebody who's a little bit bigger, I don't start them on cardio. I don't tell somebody who's 40 pounds overweight, hey, go get on the treadmill for 3 hours, because they're not going to do it. And if they do, they're going to fail, they're going to hate it, and they're never going to listen to me again. So with those people, I might use anaerobic exercise like bench press or sit-ups or things like that, that they already know how to do and they can complete and motivationally get them there. And so I said, so you base it on body type? And she was like, body type. And I said, remember back in high school biology, there was the endomorph, mesomorph, ectomorph? And she was like, yes, that's exactly what I do. And so we started to think through this as an idea. So we've got chronotype, which is genetically based, and we've got body type, which is genetically based. To go over body type for your listeners and viewers real quickly, there's 3 different body types from way back in high school times. There's the long and lean ectomorph. There's the more muscular V-shaped mesomorph. And then there's the thicker, kind of puts weight more on their sides and their hips and around their belly, endomorph. So when you really look at it, it has to do with metabolism. So ectomorphs have a quick metabolism. That's why they're so lean. Mesomorphs have got a medium metabolism, and endomorphs have a slower metabolism. So this starts to make more sense now. So when we combine chronotypes with body types, we get some very interesting things happening. And we did that. We did a study where we sent a body type questionnaire out to 5,000 people who had taken my quiz. We're lucky, about 1.5 million people have taken the quiz now. Wow. So we've got a lot of really interesting understanding and data behind it. And we started asking them, hey, what's your body type? What kind of exercise do you like to do? What motivates you? And all of a sudden, all this new data came out. And we started to realize things like, as an example, if you're a lion, right, an early riser, you being an endomorph is highly unlikely. Interesting, right? Yeah. You being a wolf like me, it's highly unlikely to be an ectomorph, a long and lean person. So now we're starting to understand differences about people. So what we decided to do was we wanted to create a schedule for people to keep them having consistent energy throughout the day. We didn't want them to feel exhausted, right? Which her clients were feeling and my patients were feeling, but we wanted to have a really well-rounded approach. Well, she's a movement expert and I'm a sleep expert. So we figured we'd combine those 2 things and see how it would work. Now, to be fair, you can't leave out diet, right? The first thing you said about energy was fuel, right? And so what we decided to do was we looked into the literature to see, was there a particular format of diet that helped give people a lot more energy during the daytime? Turns out intermittent fasting is one of the easiest ways to accomplish that goal. And to be fair, nutrition is a monster topic. I don't think I could have taken something like that on. I mean, there's so many
that's
different
a whole nother topic
diets,
in itself.
right, and cultures and all these things. So we said, okay, we're gonna recommend intermittent fasting because it's got real data behind it. And a lot of people, as soon as they report intermittent fasting, they're like, I have more energy than I've had in a long time. And it's counterintuitive because they're eating less and only during a prescribed time period, yet they feel energetic when they've been fasting. And so that's one of the things that they kind of have to learn. So then we discovered something even more interesting about this whole intermittent fasting thing. So you can base it on your chronotype. So as you know, I'm a wolf chronotype. I've been an intermittent faster for about 6 years. When I started out, I would just stop eating. I wouldn't eat anything until, like, I don't know, 11. And then I might start, I may eat from 11 to about 7 and kind of see how it went. After about a year of doing that, I said, I'm a late night chronotype. I'm going to shift this and see what happens. Boom, all of a sudden it became much more effective. I started to lean down where I wanted to. I wasn't, my weight wasn't shifting a whole lot. My energy was even better. So I was like, okay, so we can now know when to use intermittent fasting. Then we started to look at these body types and these ideas of metabolism. And then I said, okay, now I've got another one. Now we know how long somebody should fast. So if you're an ectomorph, right, a long and lean person and with a fast metabolism, you would fast for 12 hours, feed for 12 hours. If you were a mesomorph, I happen to be a mesomorph, remember the V-shaped kind of people, you would have a 14-hour fast and a 10-hour feed. Notice what I did there is I made it the fasting a little bit longer and the feeding a little bit shorter with somebody who's got a little bit more weight on them than an ectomorph. Then jump one more to the endomorph and they'll have an 8-hour feed with a 16-hour fast. So now all of a sudden you've got some basic guidelines surrounding intermittent fasting. You know what time of day to start and do it based on your chronotype, because we explain it to you in the book. And we know how long based on your body type. So we're using real genetic physical markers to help people understand how to follow that part of the process.
Wow. So there's so much to unpack there. So, well, first of all, I know, okay, since we're talking about the body types, I do obviously want to definitely go back to the sleep because there's so much to pull out from there.
I have one other thing to say about body types, if I may. One thing I want to be super clear on for all of our listeners out there is if you suffer with an eating disorder, intermittent fasting is not for you. I want to be super duper clear about this.
That's great.
You and your doctor need to have a discussion. Whoever's working with you on your eating issues need to understand that that's a very separate idea. And that's something that's very different. And to be fair, it can be dangerous for somebody with an eating disorder to become an intermittent faster because they can get to 2 extremes and things like that. So I just want to be fair warning that it's not for everybody.
Yeah, no, thank you for including that. So talking about the body types, I know there's a way to quickly determine your body type because people are like, well, how do I even determine what I am?
I'm going to show you right now. Okay. So it's super simple. There's an easy physical marker. So you take your arm and you put it in the air. Go ahead. Put your arm in the air with fist. Now take your other hand and make an okay sign, not with your front finger, but with your second finger. See what I'm doing?
The second, okay, this one.
Now put it around your wrist. If you can touch, if your fingers overlap, you are an ectom.
The middle finger and your
middle finger. It's your say goodbye, flick them off finger, right? So if they overlap, you're an ectomorph. If they touch, you're a mesomorph. And if they don't touch, you're an endomorph.
Okay, so I overlap. I thought it was the ring finger. So okay, I didn't know. Okay.
See, isn't that cool? So people,
I thought it was the middle one, but
super quick. Because it's got some great physical markers for it.
And that is like a sure, true way to determine without scientific.
Or you can go and take my quiz. So I created a second quiz. So everybody's heard about Chrono Quiz. So now if you go to My Energy Quiz, there's 8 questions and then you go into the chronotype quiz. So you can actually get them both at the same time if you want.
Okay, perfect. So all that will be in the show notes, of course. So let's go back before we get into the body types and movement and everything, because that's one section of things we'll talk about. But going back to the sleep, because this is really important. So knowing your chronotype, which you're going to take a quiz, you're going to determine which one you are. And once you determine that, I'm curious, let's say, for example, myself, I want to wake up at 5:30 because I have a lot more to do. That's how my schedule works to fit in everything I want to fit into my morning schedule. I want to wake up at 5:30, but naturally that's not the time my body automatically wakes up. Can you
Right.
shift that? Is there a way to hack that and make it work for you?
So that is the question I get every time is, can I change my chronotype? Can I shift it one way or another? So the answer is sure. But it's just like jet lag. You'd have to do it every single day, right? So jet lag and chronotypes are actually very similar, right? So if you, let's say you're in California and you're going to New York, they're ahead of a schedule for you. So it's like you're getting up early as an example, right? And that's miserable and it's not fun. And you have to take melatonin or light therapy or do something like that to shift yourself into that New York schedule from Los Angeles. The same holds true with this. Remember, this is genetic. So it's not like you can say, hey, I wish I was the lion today and go do that. Now, to be fair, you can create a schedule for yourself that gets you closer to something like that. I would caution people, because here's what I can tell you is when I get people who are really sleeping within their chronotype, something very unique happens. There's a consolidation of the total amount of their sleep. Okay. So when I started this whole project, I did it on myself. So I started going to bed exactly at midnight because I'm a wolf, and that's kind of when my time. But I didn't use an alarm. And I said, I'm just going to see what happens when I wake up naturally. So I started to wake up naturally like 7:30, right? After about 3 weeks, it was 7:15. After another month and a half, it was 6:45. And now I wake up at 6:13, almost on the nose. I can't tell you why it's 6:13. It just seems to be 6:13. And I wake up completely naturally, still going to bed at midnight. So what happened is with the consistency of my schedule, I consolidated my sleep. So here's the trick is if you want to have more time in your day, as soon as you get into your chronotypical sleep pattern or what I call swim lane, and you do it consistently, it will consolidate and you'll get more time. You'll be able to sleep later and still get more time in your day of alertness, energy, things of that nature, just by following your chronotype. So that's the long answer. The short answer is nope, it's genetic.
Wow. So you're saying by going to sleep at the recommended time for your chronotype, that just naturally your body will need less sleep. That just, so the whole idea, of course, 8 hours sleep isn't necessarily like, I always thought, oh, I need 8 hours sleep, but probably because I'm not going to sleep within my, okay, that's so intriguing.
Right?
So everybody, that's something that you get to try.
So like I found 90 extra minutes in my day, right? I was getting up at 7:30 and now I'm getting up around 6:15. So I get, what is that, 75 extra minutes in my day. What would you do with 75 extra minutes in your day?
Exactly. Yeah. Right?
I
think that's so great to know. That's so great to know. And what is more important do you think it's more important to go to sleep in your chronotype or wake up consistently at the same time?
Great question. Wake up for sure. I don't care what time you go to bed, get your butt out of bed when you're supposed to based on your chronotype, including the weekends. The consistency has got to be 7 days a week. I'll never forget, I asked this really dumb question to Tony Horton. I don't know if you know who Tony Horton is. He created an infomercial program called P90X. It was the exercise and things like that. Really interesting guy. At age 65, he could crush me. He is so fit, it's unbelievable. So I said, Tony, how many days a week do you exercise to kind of be where you are? Or I said, how many days should you exercise? He does, well, here's what I'll tell you, Michael. How many days a week do you want to diet? It's like, well, you diet every day. He was like, that's your answer, Michael. Right. And so it was like, oh, I get it. It's about the consistency every day. So finding that level of consistency is where it's going to make the most sense for you. So weekends, unfortunately, is not a time to catch up on sleep. It's actually a time to wake up at the same time and keep that circadian consistency going.
That's so good to know. I love that. That's such a great share. So for the people that have a hard time staying asleep,
yes,
what do you recommend? Because I think that's the hardest thing, especially these days with all 100%. The stress, with the obviously different schedules, with coronavirus and yada yada.
Yeah. No, you're 100% correct. We've seen more stress during COVID than we've ever seen in the history of mental health. Right. To give you a couple of statistics that are kind of scary. Right. We've seen an 18% increase in caffeine. We've seen, I think it was either a 17 or a 19% increase in alcohol consumption, but this is the one that blew me away. 23% increase in sleeping pill prescriptions.
Wow.
23% increase.
It's
You
crazy.
never see stuff like that.
It's
ever.
Huge.
Right? It's all about the stress.
And
right?
I was just going to say, is it because the cause of stress that people and they can't sleep?
And here's the thing is it's a different kind of stress than we're used to, right? You know, our normal everyday traffic, my boss is a pain in the ass, that kind of stuff. That's fine. I'm worried about my health. I'm worried about my child's health. I'm worried about my wife's health. I'm worried about my family. I'm worried about my friends. Like this whole
finances, whatever it may be.
Idea of you could be infected by somebody. I mean, like the whole thing is stressful, right? And people are, you know, it's been almost 2.5 years, I guess, around now. And people are starting to it's kind of that stress is kind of blending into their background. But what they don't understand is it's still affecting their sleep. So when people wake up in the middle of the night, what do? That's the question of the hour, correct? So,
well, yeah, what do they do? And then how to prevent them from getting up in the middle of the night. Yes.
Got it. So there's actually an anatomical reason why people wake up. So most people wake up somewhere between 2 and 3:30 in the morning, just kind of that time zone. We actually know why that is. So when you're falling asleep, you follow your core body temperature cycle. So your core body temperature cycle rises. Once it hits about 10:30, it hits a peak and then begins to fall. That fall is actually a time for your brain to release melatonin. So as soon as it realizes that there's been a temperature fall or you're cooling your body, melatonin is released. By the way, this is one of the reasons why we need to sleep in the cold, not the heat. Also why we don't exercise within 4 hours of bedtime, because that would raise that core body temperature, kind of mess things up. As it's going down throughout the night, at around 2 o'clock in the morning, it turns and has to go back up because you've got to wake up at whatever time you need to wake up. And when it makes that change, sleep gets lighter. So it's much easier to arouse during that critical period of time as your core body temperature is rising. So number one, it isn't your fault most of the time. Now, to be fair, you know, if you drank a bunch of alcohol before you went to sleep, then yeah, you're going to wake up in the middle of the night because you're going to have to pee. You're going to burn through the sugars. Your bladder's going to be full. Got to be honest with you. That's kind of on you, right? Like, you know, like you got to think this through, you know, or if you're waking up in the middle of the night because you drank a pot of coffee that day, once again, I think that's on, you know, user error, if you will. But when you wake up in the middle of the night and it's not one of those things, there's a few strategies I want to give people. So number one, don't look at the clock. Don't do it. Here's the problem. Everybody looks at the clock every single time. They instantly do the mental math and they say, oh crap, it's 2:30. I've got to get up at 6:30. Sleep. And they actively try to sleep. Here's the thing, Erica. Sleep is a lot like love. The less you look for it, the more it shows up, right? So, you know, when you're out there looking for that perfect person, that Noah in your life, and you don't find them, but the second you stop looking, boom, that person walks in the door. That's exactly how sleep works, is when we push and we try too hard, we create a level of anxiety that is not able to override the sleep process is not able to override that.
Is it just because our mind's going like thinking, okay.
Exactly. So when we look at the clock, we immediately have a bad reaction. So that's number one. Let's change that for people. There are 3 different pieces of information that people need to know. Number one, you need a heart rate of 60 or below to enter into a state of unconsciousness as a general guideline. So when you wake up in the middle of the night, if you don't have to, don't pee. Everybody does this. They wake up and they're like, well, I don't know, maybe I have to go. I guess I'll go into the bathroom and go to the bathroom. And when I come back, I'll settle down and go to sleep. Here's the problem. When you go from a lying position to a seated position to a standing position, guess what happens to your heart rate?
Immediately goes up. Gotcha.
Straight up. Well past 60, right? So if you don't have to pee, don't pee. To be clear, if you got to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom, okay? Or start to limit your fluids before bed. That's another thing that people can do, of course, unless you're diabetic and you talk with your doctor about that. But the second thing you want to do is stay in bed. Now, this is against many people's recommendations. Out there, when you see the normal sleep hygiene recommendations, they say, oh, if you don't fall asleep in 15 or 20 minutes, get up out of bed, go into another room, do something until you're tired, and then come back. I completely disagree with this, all right? And I've got data to prove it. There's something out there called non-sleep deep rest. So what is this? This is lying in my bed, eyes closed, in the dark, but not asleep. Turns out this is rejuvenative. It's not like sleep, but it's not that far off. About an hour of that is worth about 20 minutes of sleep or so. So number one, remember, worst case scenario, you can't fall back asleep at 2:30. Just lying there and chilling out is doing your body some good. Okay. So that's point number two that you have to understand. Point number three is we've got to get some way to slow down your heart rate and lower your anxiety. So when you look at the clock, even though I told you not to, and you're going to do it anyway, the thing you need to tell yourself is, oh, I was listening on Erica's show. That sleep guy said, if I just lie here and relax, it's still going to have some beneficial effect for me. So that starts to lower their anxiety, right? Because all we're trying to do is allow the natural sleep process to take back over. So turning and looking at the clock and saying, this is awesome. I can either go back to sleep now, and if I don't, that's okay. I can lie here, still chill out, still get some rejuvenation. I'm good, lower stress, begin sleep process. The third thing that you're going to do is actually some techniques for breathing. So my favorite is 4-7-8 breathing. So this is where you breathe in for a count of 4, you hold it for a count of 7, and you breathe out for a count of 8. So this is a technique that was developed by Dr. Andrew Weil, believe it or not, for the Navy SEALs. And so it helps them slow their heart rate down. So when they're a sniper, people don't know this, but your heart rate can actually change the trajectory of a bullet if your heart's beating too fast. So they have to have those guys and gals be super chill, below 60 to be able to do this. So we take this technique and we use it in the middle of the night to lower our heart rate. Because remember, 60 beats is what we want to get under. So we do a 4-7-8 breathing. We could do a new method of counting sheep, which I tell people to count backwards from 300 by threes.
Oh my gosh, like forget it.
Right?
Impossible.
It's not impossible, but it's mathematically so complicated. You can't think of anything else. And it's so damn boring. You're out like a light.
Oh, funny.
Right? So trying some of these things in the middle, chilling yourself out and having a positive attitude are all the things that you would want to do in the middle of the night to help you be able to get there. I actually wrote an entire blog specifically on this. So if people want to really dig into the details, we can put a link to it in the show notes, but it's at my website, thesleepdoctor.com. In the blogs, just type in middle of the night and it'll pop right up.
Okay, great. Well, so there's two key things to remember with that is your heart rate needs to be below 60 and also cooler temperature, the better. So sleeping with your heat on is not going to do good. I know when it's been hot in the room, like my whole sleep is disrupted. Completely. So it's those two things I think is really good to remember when you're trying to get good quality sleep. So that's really good to know. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one more thing is, we're in the middle of winter now. And in cold temperatures, a lot of people are turning the heat on in their bedrooms to kind of get toasty and warm. Here's one of the problems is that the air gets dry.
Yes.
Right. And so if you're going to be using your heat during the winter time, which I recommend, get a humidifier, because there's now data to show that humidity in the air has a tremendous effect on your ability to fall asleep or stay asleep.
Oh, that's great advice.
NASA just did a study.
Yeah, that's great. And so another thing for those people that have insomnia or possibly just, their chronotype, whatever it may be, the people that have a hard time falling asleep, they'll generally common public go for melatonin. Right. And I know you share something about that, but also I want to touch on what do you think about melatonin and then also sleeping pills?
Yep, sure. Okay. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a tirade right now. All right. So there's melatonin, there's over-the-counter sleep aids, anything with a PM attached to it. And then there are supplements, right? These are there are sleeping pills. So we've actually got 4 categories. So the first one is melatonin, which falls under the supplement, but I want to double tap on that one real quick. So melatonin is the most popular sleep supplement in the world, and it's the most abused, and the more people use it incorrectly than any other supplement that there is. So let me give you a couple of interesting statistics. Many people don't know melatonin is available by prescription only in many places in Europe. So you can't just walk into the local health food store. It's a hormone. It's not an herb. It's not a root. It's actually a hormone. Somehow or another, it slipped under the FDA's guidelines, unfortunately. And 95% of it is in an overdosage format. The correct dose, based on the work of Dr. Workman out of MIT, is somewhere between 0.5 and 1.5 milligrams is all you need to get plasma concentration levels up to where it becomes effective. It's almost impossible to find it in that dose. I see it in 3s, in 5s, in 10 milligrams. This is a terrible idea on many levels. So folks out there, if you're taking melatonin and you have weird, vivid dreams or scary dreams, that is the #1 sign that you are overdosing on melatonin, right? Bring it back. You just don't need that much melatonin in your system, to be fair. Another little small caveat, people think because melatonin is a natural hormone that it's okay to give it to children. I'm completely against this idea, and I'll explain why. In Europe, at high dosages, melatonin is actually a contraceptive. Yes, you heard me say that correctly. It's actually a contraceptive. I can't think of anything worse for a young female developing body than to be placed on a contraceptive when it's completely unnecessary to do, right? So anybody under the age of 18, I would argue, should not be placed on melatonin, #1. #2, if you tested them to see if they had a melatonin deficiency, I would argue probably less than 2 to 3% of people worldwide have a melatonin deficiency. So you're putting something in your system that your system already has, and it really is for no good reason. There is one group of kids that it is important to actually have a high dose of melatonin in. These are children on the autism spectrum. There's been a lot of data, and I don't know all the mechanisms behind it, but we do seem to see that there is a differential in the melatonin production of this population of people. So we like to give them 3, 4, 5 milligrams of melatonin. It does actually help them sleep. My big thing is, why take melatonin if you don't have a melatonin deficiency? Right? So I tell people, get tested. There are saliva tests, there are urine tests, there are blood tests. You can actually order them online. They're not that hard to find. And you can learn, oh, if I have a melatonin deficiency, then maybe I should take melatonin. That kind of brings me all the way to the other side, which is supplements one more time. When I look at people and I want to decide, hey, do I want to put somebody on magnesium, vitamin D, melatonin? I run blood work on them. I ask them to go to their doctor and I say, hey, let's figure out if you have a deficiency in this area first, right? I want the body to get up to par levels. So I don't want you to have no deficiencies and see how you sleep. Then we can start thinking about, oh, do we want to add a supplement like a valerian or a magnolia bark that have been shown to lower anxiety before bed and help people fall asleep. But I want to make sure your body is working the right way first before we add something, even if it's something natural, on top of that.
That makes sense.
Many people also walk into the pharmacy and they grab the first PM thing that they can find. It's usually some form of a pain killer, like an analgesic plus a PM. I want to be very clear about this. Many, if not all, of the PM medications, the PM part is Benadryl. Okay, that's all it is. It's something called diphenhydramine, which is also known as Benadryl. There's now significant data to show that daily use of this has got a high correlation with both Alzheimer's and dementia.
Wow.
Okay, so just laying it out there, it is not the thing to be doing on a daily basis. Doesn't make sense. And by the way, if you need something every single day to help you go to sleep, you should probably be talking to somebody like me, right? You should be, seeking out a sleep specialist and try to find out what really is the best treatment modality for what it is that you're having, because there's a lot of flavors of insomnia. And people sometimes try to figure it out themselves. And to be honest with you, most people aren't particularly good at it. I've been doing this for 23 years, so I can pretty much spot people up pretty quick and then be able to kind of get them on their path, as most sleep specialists can be able to do. So an occasional use of a PM is fine. Like you're on a trip or whatever, and you have some in your bag, I don't care. If you're using it every night, probably not the best thing to do. Probably need to be speaking with your doctor, which leads us to medications, right? So when is a medication appropriate? I want to be also super clear about this. I am not a big proponent of medications, but I am not your doctor, right? You and your doctor have a relationship. And if you and your doctor decide that you should be taking Ambien and you should be doing it every single night for 15 years, that is a conversation between you and your doctor, right? I am not here to change that in any way, shape, or form. There are people out there that must have a pill to sleep. It's unfortunate, but they are out there, okay? Does it mean that everybody that's taking a sleeping pill needs it? No way, right? A lot of overprescription of sleeping pills. I also want to be clear for folks listening, never, never, never cold turkey yourself off a sleeping pill. Never. All right. You get something called rebound insomnia. You could be up for 3 or 4 days.
Wow. And
it can be a very scary situation. People get super highly anxious. People get panic attacks. People get hallucinations. It's not fun. So if you are one of those people who says to themselves, gosh, maybe I want to look into some alternatives to sleeping pills or something like that. Talk with your doctor and get a taper schedule so that you can slowly lower the medication under your doctor's guidance and then bring on the new protocol, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Phew.
Well, I know there's a lot to it, and I know you could go in much more depth with, but I think the one thing is there is a reason why you're not sleeping well or able to sleep or maintain your sleep. And 100%. It generally probably has to do with stress, what you're eating, how much coffee you're having, the time you're doing it, blah, blah, blah. There's so many factors. And I know one of the things you share, or two of the things, most importantly, stopping caffeine. Generally, I think you say by 2 p.m., pretty much everybody. And then drinking within 3 hours or not within 3 hours of sleep.
Correct. So when we look at caffeine, a couple things to think about there. Caffeine has a half-life between 6 and 8 hours. So I say 2 p.m. because most people like to kind of consider going to bed around 10, and that gives me 8 hours where about 50% of that caffeine is out of the system. To be clear, there's a scarier statistic out there. I looked it up the other day, and it's called the quarter life. So half-life is where your body gets rid of half of it and half of the compound is still there. How much time does that take? Which is what I just described for caffeine. The quarter life is when you only have 25% of it left in your system. How long does that take? 12 hours.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, right? So if you drink coffee at 8 o'clock in the morning, 25% of it is still on board at 8 o'clock at night. If people are wondering where they have their sleep problem, one of the first places we like to look at is your caffeine consumption. You don't feel the jittery feeling. You don't even feel the energy burst, but it's floating around in your brain and it's making it very difficult for your brain to go to sleep.
It's so good to know. Yes, for sure. And I think people don't realize, because some people are like, oh, I slept 8 hours. But really, when it comes down to it, which I know there's ways to test it, like the Aura ring, which I know you're a big component of that, which people could look up. I'll plug that in the show notes as well. I do not own one or have never used one, but I know there's a lot of people that have their stamp of approval on it. But there's ways to test the quality of sleep. And people don't realize the alcohol or the caffeine actually really disrupts the quality.
It really does. Wait, I want to say one more thing about alcohol, if I can. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
So we mentioned alcohol and how does that work? So remember, it takes the average human approximately 1 hour to digest one alcoholic beverage. Okay. And it all has to do with how close to lights out and how much alcohol you drink. So remember, there's a really big difference between going to sleep and passing out, right? We want to avoid the passing out. We want to keep the going to sleep. But hey, I like red wine and I like scotch. Why can't I have that with dinner? You can. Here's how you do it. You have 1 glass of wine, drink 1 glass of water, wait 1 hour. You have second glass of wine, have a second glass of water, wait 1 hour. What that does is it allows your body to get through it. You can still enjoy your adult beverage and it doesn't have as big an effect on your sleep. As a general guideline, I tell people stop drinking 3 hours before bed, hoping that people will stop at that 2 drink limit if they can. Now, to be clear, there's a reason why we say only 2 drinks. So when your brain has enough alcohol in it that you start to feel buzzed, that's actually your brain cells dying, unfortunately. It's not, yeah, I know, right? It's like, oh gosh. And it's not really very, very good for you. So your brain says there's a toxin in my head. And so it increases a hormone called cortisol because you need to be aware of what's going on. Cortisol is the fight or flight hormone. This is the high energy, high adrenaline hormone. Now you're an energetic drunk. You're not going to bed, right? Yeah. So if you can just keep it at 2, maybe 2.5 drinks, 2.5 glasses of water, wait 3 hours, I think you'll be fine.
That's great. Before moving into the movement, because I want to make sure we really collaborate both together. Yeah. I do have one more question as far as sleep goes, because you mentioned when supplements, you talked about magnesium, and I know that is used or people consume that before sleep to help them, I think, settle down and de-stress. I also want to ask with CBD, because a lot of people are using CBD as sleep aids. So when it comes to magnesium, CBD, what do you recommend? I know you have kind of a hack for this as well.
Yeah. So first of all, people should know that I've written extensively on cannabis use and sleep. I probably have 8 or 9 articles on my blog. So if you want to learn anything there is to learn about cannabis and sleep, that's a great resource to go to. And it's all referenced, it's all scientifically based. So you'll really get, some truth there. So here's the thing. Cannabis makes people feel sleepy. It just does. Now, some people will say, well, if you have indica versus sativa, that's going to be the big differentiator. Let's be honest. THC is THC. Okay. What happens is there are these certain elements within cannabis. There's THC. That's the kind of thing that makes you feel funky. There's something called CBD. There's something called CBN. There's something called CBG. All of these are constituents. And by the way, there's like another 100 different things inside cannabis, but these are the big ones that we want to focus in on. So CBN turns out to be oxidized THC. So if you were ever in high school and you bought a bag of weed and you didn't smoke the whole thing that weekend and you stuck it back in your closet and then you came back 3 months later and it was brown and people called it dirt weed, that is CBN. And if anybody ever tried that, you pretty much went straight to sleep. There's some data to suggest that CBN can absolutely be one of those things that makes us start to feel sleepy. CBD, however, in order to see any type of sleepiness effect, there's only been one study that I've been able to find, and you need 120 milligrams of CBD, which is like almost a whole bottle, right?
Wow.
So the thing to recall, what CBD does a great job of is lowering inflammation and helping with pain. If either one of those is affecting your sleep and you take CBD and your pain goes down or your inflammation goes down, it could tangentially help sleep. But as a sleep aid itself, we really don't have enough data yet to say that we've got anything substantial other than at this 120 milligram dosage.
That's so great to know, because we could be investing in CBD that says it will help you sleep well, and it's probably not doing it. It's more like your psychology telling you it's helping.
Yeah. So what some people are doing, which is interesting, is they'll take CBD and they'll put it with known herbs that do help with sleep, right? So with ashwagandha, with some people are pairing it with melatonin, which we've already talked about is not the best idea. People can be pairing it with valerian. People can be pairing it with known things that have got data on them for sleep and putting it in there. We kind of call it greenwashing, I think is the new term for something like that. But at the end of the day, or that might not be right, but at the end of the day, here's the kind of the basic idea here is we know it helps people sleep. We don't know exactly how or why. We do know that it does have a tendency, if you use THC, so that's the psychedelic component, we do know that it lowers REM sleep and it increases heart rate. Remember, heart rate is that big thing that helps us get back to sleep, right? And we want that heart rate below 60. So there's things to play with there. If I were a betting man, which I am, I would say within the next 3 to 5 years, there will be a group that will come forward with the research that will help enlighten us as to doing this. Me personally, I'd love to be the tip of that spear. I've been looking for the right people to kind of partner with on that kind of a project. I think that might be one of the next things I'm considering doing. But I don't know, we'll see. But, understanding that I think is very interesting. And here's one really special statistic that I think kind of says it all. Did a great study at Colorado where they went into a county where there was no dispensary. So for folks out there who don't know this, Colorado, it's recreationally legal to use cannabis, and it's also medically legal to use cannabis. So they went into this one county that had no dispensary, and they monitored in the drugstores how many OTC sleeping pills were purchased. So how much Tylenol PM, how much Advil PM, things like that, and they got a number. Within about 6 months, a new dispensary was placed in that county. Guess what happened to the number of sleeping pill, those sleeping pill things? Went straight down. Wow. A second dispensary opened up, even further. People are looking for an answer, and it's not Tylenol PM, right? It's not ZQuil. There's something in there. We're just not quite there yet with the science. To be fair, if people want to experiment around, I don't think I have a huge problem with it. But remember, we're not trying to get stoned. We're trying to go to sleep. I'd say those are very different objectives.
Absolutely. And I would love if you could just share, because talking about the magnesium, you have this concoction. I thought it was
my banana tea.
Yeah, I would love if you could share that, because I think this is interesting. And I want to know, with sharing that, why is it good to get that magnesium? How will that help our sleep?
So first of all, many people have magnesium deficiencies. I would argue almost most people have magnesium deficiencies. And here's the thing is we have to eat it. Our bodies don't produce magnesium. And then we have a second problem, which is most of the soil has been over-tilled. And so magnesium isn't coming up through the stalks of the vegetables that we're eating. So even if we ate a bushel of kale a day, we still probably wouldn't get the amount of magnesium that we need. Magnesium supplementation is something that I recommend to people. There is some data to suggest that it can help with sleep. There appears to be a particular type of magnesium that seems to work better than others. It's called magnesium threonate, like the number threonate. But there's a better way to get your magnesium than from a pill. You can get it from a banana. So lots of people don't know, but we call bananas nature's sleeping pills and because they're loaded with magnesium. The thing that's interesting though, is it's the peel that has most of the magnesium, like 3 times what's in the fruit. So here's my recipe for what I call banana tea, right? So go out and get an organic banana, wash it off, cut off the tip and the stem, cut it in half, leave the peel on and the fruit in it. So all I've asked you to do is wash off the outside of a banana, cut off the top and the bottom and cut it in half. That's it. Take these 2 pieces, drop them into 3 cups or 4 cups of boiling water and boil it till the banana turns brown, which takes about 3 or 4 minutes. Then steep the water and then drink the water. You can eat the banana if you want. What a lot of my patients do is they save them and they make banana bread out of them, which is kind of yummy as well. But the banana, there's no tea, by the way. So all I'm asking you to do is boil a banana with the peel on. But there's so many, what do they call it? I think flavonoids or phytosteroids that help you absorb the magnesium better. And that comes natural in the banana. So it's a great way to be able to get your magnesium at night. Now, I will tell you that my daughter says, Dad, it's very banana-y. So you really have to like the taste of bananas, number one. My son hates bananas, so he won't touch it. And I have some moms who will make it at the beginning of the week, and then they'll give it out during the week to their kids. That's the beautiful part, is it has no interaction effects. You can give it to seniors, you can give it to babies, you can give it to any, it's banana, right? So that's all we're talking about here. And so it's really a nice way to maybe replace your chamomile tea or have another option if you like to have that ritual in the evening time. But it's one of my favorite ways for people to get their magnesium.
So great to know. But my biggest question, because I know banana has a high sugar content.
Right, it's high glycemic index for sure.
So when you're drinking just the water, will you also be getting that?
So so it's a fair question, and I would say partially yes. So the caveat for the banana tea is if I've got somebody who's diabetic, let's say, and we don't want them to have high glycemic index, food right before bed. There is a second type of tea. This is an actual type of tea, but it's called guava leaf tea, not guava fruit and not guava juice, but guava leaf tea. It's a little medicinal tasting. I kind of like it. It's like $10 on Amazon. But what's great about it is it keeps your blood sugar stable all night long. And if you're diabetic, that can be a big deal.
That's great to know. I'll include that recipe also in the show notes. So moving on to, I have a few questions with movement, because obviously your book, I want people to grab it. It will be in the show notes because it has everything walked out and laid out and everything and protocols and whatnot, but movement. So we talked about the body types, which is super critical to know, which you could take the test to find out that, or do the finger
do the wrist thing.
Yeah. But as far as the movement and your chronotype, how does that intertwine? Like, I know you talk about there's these 5 movements that everybody should be doing. Can you kind of touch on how the movement and knowing your chronotype provides us more energy?
Absolutely. So one of the things that one of the things I tell people all the time is like sitting is the new smoking, right? Like we don't want to be stable. We want to be up and moving around as much as we possibly can. Because kind of like that old adage, the physics property, a body in motion tends to stay in motion, whereas a body at rest tends to stay at rest. Even though that's a physical property, I think we can adopt that here when we talk about people moving. And this stagnation, and especially during COVID, where it's been even worse because people are not getting outside, they're not going to their gym, because of shelter in place and all of those kind of things. What we've seen is a real sedentary person develop at this point. We know this isn't good for you, especially from an energetic component, right? If you're lying on the couch, it doesn't make you want to be very energetic, right? So what we did was Stacey and I developed a program, we call it the 5x5. And we have 5 minutes of 5 different movements throughout the day. It's very, very simple to do. And to be clear, this is not an exercise program. Nobody's getting muscles from doing this. This is merely to maintain your energy throughout the daytime. So the first one everybody does right after they wake up, and it's called a stretch. Kind of makes sense. You've been lying there for a while, you're stiffed out, get up. I do it actually when I'm brushing my teeth. So I'll be brushing my teeth and stretching and doing, my dogs think I'm insane. Do the stretch first. The next one you'll do is a shake. So this happens a little bit before lunchtime. You can shake your hands, you can shake your arms, you can shake your legs. Do you have dogs?
I just lost mine on Christmas, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm
Otherwise,
so sorry.
I know what you're about to say, how dogs
right?
shake.
You know how dogs, when they get up, they shake right
Mhm.
before they do this? That's exactly what we're after there. It's very energetic, and it helps really kind of realign that stagnation that was kind of setting in. The next move, it happens a little bit after lunch, and that's called a bounce. And it's exactly what you think it is. It's 5 jumping jacks or 10 jumping jacks. It's pulling that old mini tramp out of the closet that you bought back in who knows when, and bouncing around on that, maybe some jumping jacks, skipping rope, whatever it happens to be. But again, movement is giving you back this kind of energetic component. Then right before dinner, we do what we call a build. So this is where we use a major muscle group. So you might do some push-ups, you might do some crunches, you might do some squats. Again, not to the point of, oh my gosh, I'm dripping sweat and I need to go, shower, just more to get my body moving, right? And again, this is all about very subscribed, controlled movements. This isn't, jumping as fast as I can type of thing. The final one is a balance. So we have people do like a tree pose before bed, things like that. What helps center people and sort of slow them down, calm them down just before bed. And so we've been running this with people for a while now, and it's quite remarkable how much energy people are reporting to us. They're like, I do my 5x5, I've got my intermittent fasting over here, and I do my sleep based on my chronotype, and the combination takes about 30 days to really, really kick into gear. And if you really follow the guidelines, almost every single person has been like, this is amazing. Now, to be fair, we do have people who've tried the program who have autoimmune disorders, so they've had a little bit different responses. We've got people who have medical situations, they may have had different responses. So results can vary somewhat, but I got to be honest with it. Every single person that actually follows the guidelines reports to me that they feel better.
When you're talking about the movement, it makes me think of, before we press record, we were talking about UPW with Tony Robbins,
Right.
which you speak on stage with him as prepping everybody to get amount of sleep before a 12, 15-hour day, which is phenomenal. But what he does, he always makes sure at some point has you get up and move, and it instantly brings that energy back. It's like, It makes so much sense. And it's so true that when you're sitting for a long time, it's like you'll get more slumpier and tired. So just by a little action of movement, it gets the blood flowing, the lymphatic system moving, and then it kind of reignites that energy within you. But then when you plug in your chronotypes and getting the right, sleeping on your schedule, it's really phenomenal how it works together. So I know there's so much you include in this book, and it's really just, I was browsing through it as preparation for this interview. And I love how you include the protocols, the timing based on your chronotype, based on your body type, and just so many hacks as well. And the interesting thing is the intermittent fasting. I did have one question with that.
Of course.
You were saying how you adjust the timing depending on your chronotype, but how does this help you lose weight? Because you said you lost weight because of this by adjusting it.
So I don't know the exact mechanism, but what I can tell you is I'd lost some weight doing regular intermittent fasting, and when I rotated towards my chronotype, I lost more weight. So what my guess is that my metabolism functions on a late chronotype as well. So I was eating during a time when my metabolism wasn't as highly functioning, and when those two met up, it would allow my metabolism to move faster through it and probably move through the calories faster. That's my hypothesis.
That makes sense.
Right. I don't have a ton of data to put behind that, but I think that's probably how it works.
Yeah. And everybody could test it out too, to see how it
exactly.
works for them.
Exactly. And that's the point. And I really appreciate the fact that you talked about the different types of information that we have in there. I want to be very clear about something. I'm directive. I'm prescriptive. I tell people what to do. And then I want them to play around with it a little bit for themselves. So I'm a great starting point. go to bed at this time, wake up at this time, do these 5 movements, try this intermittent fasting if your doctor says it's okay, work through this program. We tell you what to start first, then to do second, then to do third. Like, you don't just jump in and do all of it at the same time, by the way, because then it would never work. So we have an onboarding process for people, and it's based on your chronotype as well as your body types. So we're taking all of these things into account, but at the end of the day, I'm telling you exactly what to do and when to do it. This isn't some theory book. This is go to bed at this time, eat this then, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And everything's science-based. And again, you've been doing this for a really long time. So
23 years.
Yeah. You know your stuff for sure. Is there anything we missed that you feel is really critical to help people, obviously get more efficient sleep?
Yeah, I think there's one aspect of the book that I wanted to touch on that's actually one of my favorite aspects to the book. We talk about something called emotional energy.
That's right, yes.
Right? And so, when you think about energy, I decided sleep's easy, right? You have stages, right? You have cycles, things are measurable. How do you measure energy, right? So that was kind of one of those things I was kind of grappling with in my head. And I started to think, well, I think there are 5 different types of energy, and we address 4 in the book. There's, like you said, when we started up the podcast, which is fuel or food energy. There's resting energy coming from sleep and from rest. Those are 2 different things, right? There's emotional energy and there's moving energy. The 5th one, I would argue, is spiritual energy. And to be honest with you, that's an entire book. So I didn't have the space for that. It's a very interesting area, but I wasn't able to kind of get there. But the emotional energy part was the part that really kind of tapped into me, because here's the thing. We all have these people in our lives. I call them emotional vampires, right? So these are the people that come in and they just suck the life out of you, right? And I want to be fair about these people. Sometimes they're just in it for them, right? They just want to take. But sometimes there are people in our lives that are really hurting and really need us and really depend on us. And that can still take a lot out of you, right? If you've got somebody who's dealing with, let's say, an addiction issue, an eating disorder. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that people need help on. Well, we're not saying that we don't want you to be helpful to your friends and your family, but we want you to be safe in your own energy. So how do you do something like that? Well, number 1, we teach you when throughout the daytime is your lowest energy, and it's different for different chronotypes and different types of people. So we teach you how to find that point. And if you get into one of these emotionally unenergetic situations, a couple of things that you can use out of your back pocket. My favorite, music. So my son taught me this. So in the morning times, it's terrible to get adolescents to wake up for high school. I'm just going to tell you, anybody out there who's got adolescent teenagers, I'm so sorry for you. It gets worse and worse. I'm just letting you know. But it was tough to get my son up in the mornings. And so I said, all right, Cooper, you can be the DJ, but you have to wake up before 7 a.m. You can pick whatever music you want 3 days a week, and you put it at whatever volume you want.
Wow.
Now, to be clear, it was a bear to get this kid to wake up. I mean, there were fights, there was yelling, there was, everything you could imagine, right? And all of a sudden, Monday morning at 7 a.m., I hear at volume 10, you got to fight for your right to party by the Beastie Boys. And the whole house is loving it. We're all rocking around and dancing and singing. It changed the energetic component of the entire morning just by playing some music. Right? Now I don't argue with my kids. I have fun with them in the morning time. Like, that's worth a book right there.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that. Yes, there's so much goodness in your book, and I love everything you obviously put together to really optimize people's days and also have more energy to do what we love, because I obviously we're going through so many transitions in our world and everything is off. And the most important, again, people don't realize how important sleep is. It's literally what rejuvenates us, and what actually repairs our brain. And it's amazing. When you learn these things, you're like, okay, how do I sleep better? How do I get a hold of the sleep doctor? Yes. So this has been so great, Michael. I so appreciate your time, just providing so much more knowledge, and also obviously your newest book. Everybody go grab it. There's so much goodness, and go take the test to find out what chronotype, and then just, again, middle finger, thumb, wrap it around. That's your body type. Yep. Very simple. This has been awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. And for folks out there, if you're looking for more information on me, you can go to thesleepdoctor.com, and on all the social platforms, I have the same handle. We distribute all kinds of different information on different platforms. So something is on Instagram, may not be on Snapchat, may be different on LinkedIn. So check them all out. There's great information out there, and just wishing everybody some sweet dreams.
Awesome. Thank you so much.